He apparently detected my mood and stopped laughing all of a sudden. After a long hesitation, I told him that his laughter had annoyed me because I was seriously trying to understand what had happened to me. "There's nothing to understand," he replied, undisturbed. I reviewed for him the sequence of unusual events that had taken place since I had met him, starting with the mysterious look he had given me, to remembering the albino falcon, and seeing on the boulder the shadow he had said was my death. "Why are you doing all this to me?" I asked. There was no belligerence in my question. I was only curious as to why it was me in particular. "You asked me to tell you what I know about plants," he said. I noticed a tinge of sarcasm in his voice. He sounded as if he were humoring me. "But what you've told me so far has nothing to do with plants," I protested. His reply was that it took time to learn about them. My feeling was that it was useless to argue with him. I realized then the total idiocy of the easy and absurd resolutions I'd made. While I was at home, I had promised myself that I was never going to lose my temper or feel annoyed with Don Juan. In the actual situation, however, the minute he rebuffed me, I had another attack of peevishness. I felt there was no way for me to interact with him, and that angered me. "Think of your death now," Don Juan said suddenly. "It is at arm's length. It may tap you any moment. So really, you have no time for crappy thoughts and moods. None of us have time for that. Do you want to know what I did to you the first day we met? I saw you, and I saw that you thought you were lying to me. But you weren't. Not really." I told him that his explanation confused me even more. He replied that that was the reason he didn't want to explain his acts, and that explanations weren't necessary. He said that the only thing that counted was action. Acting instead of talking. He pulled out a straw mat and lay down, propping his head up with a bundle. He made himself comfortable, and then he told me that there was another thing I had to perform if I really wanted to learn about plants. "What was wrong with you when I saw you, and what is wrong with you now, is that you don't like to take responsibility for what you do," he said slowly, as if to give me time to understand what he was saying. "When you were telling me all those things in the bus depot, you were aware that they were lies. Why were you lying?" I explained that my objective had been to find a key informant for my work. Don Juan smiled and began humming a Mexican tune. "When a man decides to do something, he must go all the way," he said. "But he must take responsibility for what he does. No matter what he does, he must know first why he is doing it, and then he must proceed with his actions without having doubts or remorse about them." He examined me. I didn't know what to say. Finally, I ventured an opinion, almost as a protest. "That's an impossibility," I said. He asked me why, and I said that perhaps ideally that was what everybody thought they should do. In practice, however, there was no way to avoid doubts and remorse. "Of course there is a way," he replied with conviction. "Look at me," he said. "I have no doubts or remorse. Everything I do is my decision and my responsibility. The simplest thing I do, to take you for a walk in the desert, for instance, may very well mean my death. Death is stalking me. Therefore, I have no room for doubts or remorse. If I have to die as a result of taking you for a walk, then I must die."